your dreams.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another Genshin Impact video, and today I'm just going to be talking about the new 4-star Pyro character, Chevreuse. By the way, if you happen to like the content, just leave a like and subscribe. Chevreuse kit is basically going to be buffing Overload. That's basically all she does. Overload has a bad rep because as a transformative reaction, it does not crit the enemies, and it only really scales off of your character's level and their elemental mastery. Also, since overload reactions tend to knock back enemies, it can be very annoying to chase them down, ungrouping the enemies, causing you even more annoyance and even a DPS loss since you have to chase them down. Bloom reactions are also transformative that don't crit, that scale off of EM and the character's level. However, their scaling is much more higher than overloads, which is why people prefer bloom reactions over, well, overload. Not to mention, Vaporize is a much better reaction because it's a amplifying reaction, and it can also crit. You also have to keep in mind that with Bennett's Circle, you do have to be in the circle to make the use out of Bennett's buff, and since Overload basically knocks back the enemies away from Bennett's Circle, that's also another reason why Overload is not really well looked at. As of right now, one of the best characters for Overload, at least in my opinion, is probably Yoimiya. Since Yoimiya is a bow character, she does have the range, so she's not going to be chasing down the enemies as often as other characters like Diluc or Klee or even Hu Tao. Overload is probably one of the worst Pyro reactions. Will Chevreuse make Overload top tier reaction? I don't think she will. She will definitely buff the reaction for sure, but I don't think Overload is suddenly just going to rise up, especially since Vaporize and Bloom is just, so much better and easier to manage. Chevreuse is going to be a very niche 4-star. However, she will be good at what she does, buffing Overload. But if you do want to experiment with Overload and want Overload to be the best as it possibly can be, Chevreuse is going to be your main girl. Not only does Chevreuse buff Overload, but she can also be a healer as well, interestingly enough. Her elemental skill does AoE pyro damage and will also heal the active character that's out on the field based off of Chevreuse's max HP. Her elemental skill also has an aiming mode. Chevreuse does use a gun, kind of like Navia, and when there's a character that triggers an overload reaction, Chevreuse will gain this thing called the overcharged ball. This overcharged ball works with one of her passives, vertical force coordination. After Chevreuse fires an overcharged ball using a short range or using her elemental skill, nearby pyro and electro characters in the party will gain 1% increased attack for every 1000 max HP Chevreuse has for 30 seconds. Attack can be increased up to 40% in this way. Chevreuse's elemental burst is basically very simple. It does AoE pyro damage and only costs 60 energy. All of Chevreuse's passives are pretty useful for Overload. One of them is Double Time March, which basically decreases sprinting stamina consumption of your party members by 20%, which is pretty useful for causing overload reactions since you'll be chasing down the fucking enemy. Another passive that boosts overload is when the elemental type of all party members is pyro or electro, and there's at least one pyro and one electro characters in each of the party. Chevreuse grants coordinated tactics to nearby party members. After a character triggers the overloaded reaction, the pyro and electro resistance of the opponents affected by this overloaded reaction will be decreased by 40%. for 6 seconds. The coordinated tactics effects will be moved when the elemental types of the characters in the party do not meet the basic requirements for the passive talent. So with overloaded reactions, you do need pyro and electro, and for Chevreuse, she only needs pyro and electro characters in the party to make a full use of this passive. Obviously, like with most 4-star characters, they get pretty nutty at C6. Chevreuse's C6 is basically after 12 seconds of healing the effect from her elemental skill, all nearby party members recover HP equivalent to 10% of her max HP. After a party member is healed by her elemental skill, they will gain a 20% pyro damage bonus and electro damage bonus for 8 seconds. Okay, so that's pretty fucking good. So Chevreuse can open up to many, well, not many different teams, but she could definitely open up to some interesting meme teams like Raiden Overload, Razor Overload, Xinyan Overload, Daya Overload. I can guarantee that Chevreuse is going to overload the YouTube algorithm with overloaded comps most likely. I was uninterested in Chevreuse at first because I think her design looks pretty stupid, but I am pretty interested in her kit. I do find Overload pretty fun in the overworld anyways, so maybe picking her up for me wouldn't be that bad, especially if she is going to be on Yoimiya's banner, maybe. Chlorend lovers, you may have to consider picking up Chevreuse because Chlorend might actually be an Overload DPS character, maybe. I am not 100% for sure at all, but it could potentially be possible that Chlorend could be an Overload DPS since she is Electro and we do have an Overload support character right here. I can't imagine what else they could do with Chlorend. We already have enough Electro supports as is. So I can see Chlorend being an Overload DPS that cuts her own HP. But that is just an estimate though. So that's going to be the end of this video. Let me know what you guys think. Are you excited for Chevreuse? Are you going to pull for her? Let me know in the comments and I'll see you guys later.